Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another session of Piece of Cake with my co-host and dear brother, who will introduce himself as he does.
Well, it's me, Abdurraheem Green. I'm here, bro, and over there in the other my co-host is of course the esteemed Doctor.
Brother.
Bro, do we need to introduce ourselves? I don't think we do, bro. I think everyone knows who we are by now, right?
Are you sure? Are you sure, Abdurrahim? Okay, I'm not going to
No,
say.
I don't know, but I think I think pretty much it's the
Mashallah.
Green and Baker podcast. So maybe just dive into it from now on, bro. If you don't know who we are, you'll find out, innit?
That's a good point.
And our names are right there. Look. And Anthony Green, well, Abdurraheem Green and Abdul Haqq Baker. I don't know why it's Anthony Green. But anyway, bro, so what are we talking about this week?
We're talking about back to school. Is it education or miseducation? And I suspect this may run on because there's a lot that we need to cover. Wa alaikum salam, my sister Shireen and Faizan. Salams to you as well, mashallah. And on all of you are coming on, alhamdulillah. Good to see you here with us, mashallah. So basically, Abdurraheem,
yep.
I want to start very briefly from two perspectives, and I'm going to throw it over to you, okay? So the first, back to school. What is school? What is the purpose of school? Are we actually being educated? If we look in the annals of history, educational institutions are still a relatively new phenomena because education was done in the home, in the communities, in the villages.
Absolutely.
In that way, as we know, the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. So what is, when we say back to school, you've got all this excitement, all the shops now selling the what is it, stationery, the clothes, and we're seeing that there are challenges with parents who are finding it difficult to afford school uniforms and everything. There's a transition from children moving into different levels, different grades, going from primary school. But I want to ask this question. I've asked that, what is education? But also, Abdurraheem, if we were sending our children out to danger and harm, we were letting them go out into the street, and we knew that there was chaos with the traffic. There were no roads, no pedestrian, no lights or anything. There were drug dealers. There were all sorts of criminals there. And we knew that we were sending them out there, and we were just going to shut the door and say, Mohammed, have a really good day. Assalamu alaikum. See you when you get home. Which, well, let's say, because this is not just about Muslims now in this regard. Any child, Michael, Mary, Julie, off you go. See you at 3:30, knowing that there were those clear and present dangers and perils. Which parent in their right mind would send their children out into such an environment without them being properly prepared, or not sending them out at all? We might accompany them and be with them every step of the way. So what is education, Abdurraheem? What's its purpose? What, back to school? And would you send your children out? Would we, anyone in the UK, send their children out if they were clear and present dangers, whether they were seen or unseen, but we knew they were there?
So really, isn't it? We're having a conversation. We're not just having a conversation about education. In fact, perhaps really what we're having a conversation about is parenting. And I have to reply that yes, plenty of people would do that to their kids. There are people who sell their kids into slavery, prostitution, in order to get drugs. There are people who abuse their kids. There are people, I was thinking about, obviously when we talk about what we're going to discuss this week, then my head starts spinning. And I don't know why randomly, I don't know why I was thinking about it. But I was thinking about Sparta, right? The Spartans, the famous 300 Spartans who held off the, held off the Xerxes and the Persians, And I was thinking about the shepherd boy who was a hunchback who betrayed them. And I thought probably there were a bunch of nasty, really nasty, unpleasant people and this poor hunchback shepherd boy was rejected by them because he didn't live up to their ideas of machismo or whatever it was, and they probably deserved to be betrayed. I was thinking he probably deserved it, yeah. But then, you know, like in the best Hollywood tradition, I'm sure the Greeks there were their own propagandists, rewrote this as some heroic enterprise. But anyway, they're probably a bunch of nasty, self-obsessed. But then I was thinking, funny enough, because of our topic, I was thinking, well, every woman and every parent in Sparta handed their children over to literally be militarized. As soon as they were probably pre-pubescent, they were already being trained to go to war and to die in battle. That's basically what they trained their kids for. It was a completely militarized society. And so, yes, people are ready to do quite extraordinary things with their children. I suppose there are people, obviously there will be secularists who would look at the way Muslims raise their children, and they do consider it some sort of horrific indoctrination into some, you know, delusional belief system. So we all have opinions about, you know, about these type of things. So I guess the thing is that I guess it goes back to, the, you know, like understanding what is education, right? Let's understand what is school and what is education, and where does it fit into the whole spectrum of being a parent, but I guess more importantly, being a member of a particular society, right? So when you study this, which I've read and studied about it a lot, the whole schooling system, homeschooling, unschooling. I don't know if what we're going to be, where this is going to take us, because I have so much to say on this. Literally, because I've, you know, studied it and put my kids through all sorts of different things. But basically, just very quickly, what does it all come down? It's all about socialization. That's what it is. When I say socialization, I don't mean making friends. I mean, it is about school is about conditioning people to fit into society. And society, whatever society is, has an ethos, it has a culture, it has certain morals, it has certain norms, it has certain values. They may be good values, norms, morals, or bad ones, but that's not the point. The point is every society has these, you know, these values and these norms that it is seeking to indoctrinate children. And well, maybe indoctrinate is not a very neutral word. Maybe it's quite loaded, but I guess that's what it is. I mean, everyone's doing that. Yeah. If we were living in a Muslim Islamic, truly Islamic society, then we would be indoctrinating our children. Let's just be frank. We would say we're inculcating into our kids the values of our religion, right? So if we want to be more neutral about the way we speak about it, and use neutral language, every society is going to try and inculcate children into the values and ethos of that society. So now it goes back to, here's the question. In the West, what are our children, and what values and into? That's the real question. And is it something we want to be part of or not?
Well, I'm glad that you've come from, and that context that you've given, I think is really good. To confirm what you're saying, to endorse what you've said, and you're right. Inculcation is the softer word to be used. But when I was obviously living in the Middle East 20 years, in all of the assemblies that I was in all of the beginning of the school day, the national anthem had to be said. Unlike it is done here, it's said periodically here, special occasions, what have you. But every morning in the national schools, the Arab schools, as it were, the national anthem had to be said. Now, if that's not a premise for inculcation, okay, some will say, like they call it wataniya, nationalism, then what is inculcation? So that's a very good point. And I think that the parenting aspect, I agree with you. And thank you for jogging my memory on that and putting it front and center. But yes, parents have done many things, some of it out of necessity. We have to acknowledge that. Some selling their children or like we see some of these child marriages that take place, and the dowry is what helps that family become more stabilized and the like. Now, I'm not endorsing that. I'm not going to comment on this particular point. We're just talking about that reality that actually happens. As you've said, there is a responsibility that parents have to bear as well, depending on that environmental climate as well. What is that society about? What does that society, what is it predicated upon? But now we're saying back to school, and we see in the news now that there are some unsafe structures from a very tangible perspective. There are unsafe structures in some schools, and some students, to their surprise and parents' surprise, are not going to be able to go to school as it opens next week.
When you say unsafe structures, do you mean the buildings are not safe?
What's been all over the news the last few days.
I don't watch the news. I don't follow the news. I don't.
That's fine. I do, so I can update you.
It's literally just brainwashing. But anyway, you're quite discerning. I suppose if you know you're being brainwashed, then you can at least.
Or you read between the lines. It's what's not being said that you need to look for. So they've mentioned now. This has been known for a while, that some of the slightly older schools, but like it was asbestos many years ago, they're finding some of the infrastructure, the building blocks of the school. Starts crumbling. The technology they use for particular building structures starts crumbling after a particular number of years, and they show so literally you can't go to particular schools. They've identified apparently 110 at the moment, which is large but small when you look at the number of schools. But when we're talking about that, we're sending our children back to a particular infrastructure, but we're also sending them back to a type of curricula that is there. And I want to read from a teacher, really good book. I heard what you said about me, or I heard what you said about what you said, and it's a black teacher, white system, Jeffrey Boachi, really nice individual. But what he says is very important. So we're sending them back to an infrastructure, but we're sending them back to a curricular infrastructure as well. And what he says here is this, Abdurraheem, it's quite interesting from a black teacher's perspective. Being fluent in whiteness is not about language. As a teacher, it means being able to deliver a curriculum that is so white, so default Eurocentric, so unquestionably Caucasoid in its aims and outlook, that the people around you actually overlook the glaring non-whiteness of your skin when you deliver it. I hate to say it, but I've got it down to a fine art. I've stood there for years at a time teaching the great white curriculum so well that no one has thought to take me to one side and say, you do realize you're black, right? so I find that this is what we're sending them back to from a curricular perspective. We're sending them to a post-enlightenment perspective, when we've seen what's been happening with the Natural History Museum recently. I'm going off tangentially, but I'm going to come back to the point that artifacts have been stolen by one of their former employees. But hold on, those artifacts were stolen from other crimes, other parts of the world, and there's still arguments to return them. So we're talking about a curricula that's been built upon post-enlightenment premise. So again, we're sending them back to school. Is it education or miseducation, Abdurraheem? And
that's why I left. I went to London University to study history, and I left. And one of the big reasons I gave up on history altogether, because it was just so disgustingly, blatantly Eurocentric. And I had spent 10 years, I'd spent 10 years of my school holidays going to Egypt, right? And experiencing the reality of a very different society and culture, which I wouldn't say it didn't take me long to believe that the society and culture in Egypt, despite all its shortcomings, was way superior to the Western society, way superior. Like almost everything was better, except, some financial issues, but that didn't even matter, because what really shocked me was the fact that wealth did not equal happiness, that there were people who were really poor and extremely happy. And so the whole edifice, the whole lie, and this is what it comes down to, right? So, when you say education or miseducation, so this goes what it goes back to, because basically children are being inculcated and indoctrinated with a lie. And that's the real issue. The real issue is they are not being prepared really for life. They're not really being given real opportunities. They're being taught a lie. The underlying fundamental premise of Western education is a lie. And they are literally being prepared to be, I think, the most powerful. I really could, like, because it's full of music, I'm obviously, I really wouldn't want to encourage people to watch it, but on the other hand, it is the most visually powerful, shocking film that really strips bare everything about the Western education system, and that is Pink Floyd's movie The Wall, right? And anyone who knows the song from back in the days, bro, the incredible movie, that the video that came with that, and the lyrics, all in all, you're just another brick in the wall. And it was that, yeah, we don't need no education. We don't need
I know it well, Abdurraheem.
No dark sarcasm in the classroom. Hey,
right,
teacher,
you know what?
Leave those kids alone. Bro, let me finish, bro. We keep interrupting.
I'm waxing lyrical, remembering the lyrics. When I tell you, I want you to carry on, Abdurraheem. Yeah. Why? Because I was actually an extra acting in the movie. Remember the...
No way, bro.
Actually, we're lying. Remember the video where you had them on the conveyor belt?
Yes. I remember.
I was one of those individuals.
Oh my God.
The conveyor belt. Okay, so the reason I interject is to say to you, I know the movie. I was part of that particular scene.
Wow.
You went to stage,
bro. That's just, bro. I know, bro. I'm just connected to you even more now, bro. Like, if we had a connection before, like, this is like my hairs are standing on end because I won't lie. That film, that song, that film, that video, all of that had a massive impact. There's things that have a big impact on the way you look at the world and the way you think about it. And there's no doubt that had a massive impact on me. And it really, I'm going to have to recommend everybody to watch it. Sorry, yes, it's full of music, but it is extremely powerful. The lyrics of those songs are extremely powerful. The message is entirely relevant. And it pretty much sums up my view of education. That's what I think it is. Like, you watch that movie, you see that. If you don't want to watch the whole, the whole movie itself is really powerful. But if you just can't, you haven't got time for the whole movie, just watch the old, the video for I don't know, what was it called? The Wall, the actual song.
The Wall. And the atmosphere when we were doing that, because what it was, as I said, when they told us what they wanted us to do, we're all suited up, we had to wear the white mask, and we had to do a number of takes. Now, I was I think I was 12, 13. And so basically, as you know, because it's funny, I haven't seen that aspect, the video, because I've done it so many times, I didn't look at the effect. But what happened is that we had to do a number of takes, because as you were coming up to the conveyor belt, as you know, we're teenagers, we're children. If you know you're going to fall, you're going to prepare yourself for the fall. You're going to brace yourself. So what kept happening when we were going over, just as we were about to fall, some of us put our hands up, some of us turned, and it's like, cut. We're to
no, because you have to sort of stand like a zombie, isn't it?
We had to stand. Obviously, there's a cushions and whatever softness to cushion our fall. But the atmosphere on the set at that time, we were younger, but they knew they were making history at that particular point.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it was very, like, going into, as we're saying, going into a feeder. Students going into a feeder. And as I said, it's funny when that's why you saw me start smiling when you mentioned it. I didn't know you was going to mention the movie, but I was thinking, oh my gosh, Abdurraheem mentioning something. I was actually an extra
That's just incredible, bro.
That video, mashallah.
That's just amazing.
But you're right. The lyrics to that song were, as I said, they knew they were making history at that particular time. We had after that Boomtown Rats, I Hate Mondays. After that, committed sexual. She shot up the place, didn't she? Because she hated Mondays. That feeling of and starting school, starting work. So I think now, when what you're saying about Western education, being predicated upon a lie. I'll say, yes, some might say that's a bit strong. Okay, a distortion is a lie in that instance as well. And I think that what needs...
No, it's a lie, bro. It's a lie from two. I'm going to say it's a lie from two. It's a lie from two angles. Number one, the lie is that the underlying idea that wealth equals happiness, right? That's a lie. Secondly, the second lie is that they're actually preparing you any way, shape or form to be wealthy anyway. They're not, right? The vast majority of schools, unless you go to an extremely expensive private school where they will prepare you for wealth and power, right? But if you go to a state school, they are not preparing you to be wealthy. The proof of that is they don't teach you about taxes. They don't teach you anything about taxes. If they taught kids about taxes, I'm telling you, if they taught this whole generation of kids they started teaching them about taxes, in 10, 15 years time, there will be literally a revolution. People would just not put up with it. Minds would start to open. People would start to go, what the hell is this? It is absurd. If you think about the fact how you are taxed on every single thing, like you are taxed 2, 3, 4 times over, right? You earn money, which you are taxed on, and then you go and buy goods and you are taxed on the goods that you are buying, right? It like the levels, even when you die, you are taxed. Every single thing that you do and participate in, almost without exception, you are taxed on. If people began to actually understand what is going on, they would say, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. This is absolute madness. They don't teach you that because they don't want to teach you, right? They don't want to teach you because the rich people know how to get around the tax system efficiently. They don't want people to know that, right? And they don't teach people to be entrepreneurs. They don't teach you to stand up for yourself. They don't teach you to be an entrepreneur. They indoctrinate you and prepare you to be another brick in the wall, to be just a part of the mincing machine, part of the, the I don't, honestly, bro, that what can I say? Watch the movie and you'll see you and you know what? And it actually sort of makes me sad to see how enthusiastically Muslims, putting their children onto that conveyor belt, thinking that we're achieving something, we're getting somewhere. Oh, my child's a doctor, my child's an engineer, my child's a lawyer, my child is this. Yeah, you're just mincing them in the mincing machine. That's it. They're just, really, that's the reality. Okay. And so I think it is a lie. It's a big lie, because the idea that it's a lie from two angles, because the underlying premise of the whole society is a lie. And then they're not even preparing you, not even teaching you to achieve what they claim their philosophy is about. In other words, achieving wealth. So that's no, important. The wealth is for...
Jazakallah for that clarification, because I felt some may say, oh, that's too strong, but you've clarified it. And I think...
Yeah, it's from that point. I'm not knocking teachers. And, there are some really good and positive things about the education system, and there are a lot of people genuinely trying. And I don't know if it's still true, but certainly there's certainly lots of people in UK who are quite awake, who know what's going on, and I'm sure in some way, shape or form, teachers and schools have a part. It's not all unquestioning obedience taking place there,
right?
But it is becoming increasingly like that. Now, you've been away, but my kids have been in school, right? And I've had conversations with teachers and headmasters who are exasperated. They don't have any choice. There's no flexibility. The curriculum has become more and more confined. You are less and less able to opt out. You are less and less able to question the narrative, right? Headmasters have no flexibility. Like, it's extraordinary, for example, that, this happened, I don't know, quite a few years ago now, but many teachers were saying, if kids missed a couple of weeks of school to go on holiday somewhere, it's actually good for them. And a lot of people were doing it because the holidays were so expensive and they said that even 2 weeks in Costa del Sol sitting on the beach was as good as 2 weeks of education in school, maybe even better. It was a better education for them. The government didn't care. They just totally ignored this. They just, clamped down on anyone taking any time off, having any type of flexibility. My biggest gripe with the whole system is that my kids don't belong to you. They don't belong to the school. They don't belong to the government, right? They're not your kids. They're our kids, right? And that's really my biggest gripe. What I really, really dislike about the educational system now, and it's increasingly become like that, is they are taking over the space of parenting. They are becoming parents. And that's very scary. That's dystopian on another level. This is the stuff, bro, that we used to read about communist Russia, indoctrination camps and stuff like that. School now is getting more and more on that type of level,
right,
where everything they're taking responsibility for, right?
and
yeah.
Now, I think you've led that on really well, because I remember when we spoke about identity a few weeks ago, and I spoke about the government giving contracts where there could be, they could condition us to be legitimized identities, law-abiding citizens. This education or miseducation and everything you've just said is feeding into that, so much so that there is kickback, and that's why they're taking more control. We see what's happening when we're looking at the indigenous populations of Canada, what the atrocities committed with them, what we find the Aboriginal, what we've seen the Aboriginal communities in Australia and so many places in America. And so what you're saying speaks to that, Abdurraheem, that conditioning, so that you can become that law-abiding, legitimized identity that is comfortable, almost like, remember the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers? We're looking at things where they were taken over and indoctrinated, similar to Stepford Wives from a particular gender perspective. But I want to read something else here, which I shared with you guys earlier on. I know you haven't had time to look at it. It was sent to me today in a group that
I'm in. It was a whole book, bro. I looked at the contents. It looked like some deep, heavy stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Voltaire's bastards, okay? Voltaire, we know who Voltaire was. John Ralston, what he writes, John Ralston Saul, there's something he's writing just in the introduction I was reading today. He's saying, what of today? Well, we see what passes for political, administrative, and intellectual leadership still hanging on desperately to old-fashioned concepts of trade and growth, to name but a few of their favorite things. They seem to believe in the sanctity of the commercial contract, but see no equivalent sanctity attached to the well-being of the citizenry. So exactly what you're saying there, there's no concern except if it can be controlled. And so what they're doing now, as you said, and I like what you said, they're our children. But you know what, Abdurraheem? The battle for our children, children being made ward of courts, children have given them the right at a young age to say that I feel this way, or I don't want to be with my parents anymore. We've seen young Muslim children saying I don't want to wear hijab anymore, calling us the social services. So they have moved into that dystopian space, which is away from the democratic ideals that they're speaking about. But coming back to this miseducation as well, I remember that I've shared so many times before. There's a flea experiment that is on YouTube, okay, and you should look at it, okay. It's a lot, about 30 seconds, 45 seconds. The scientist places the fleas into a jar, okay, a firm jar, and they remove the borders so you can see, and it says those fleas become conditioned that if you remove the lid of the jar, they would not jump beyond it. Their offspring will not jump beyond it. They will stay confined in that particular space because they've been conditioned. Everyone, the flea experiment is there on YouTube. Have a look at that. Is this what's being done? I believe so. I believe it's being done on an industrial scale, and it's just being sugar-coated occasionally so that parents are either enamored by it or they're subdued to the extent that they know they don't have powers. You've mentioned about the holiday thing. I remember we used to go on holidays when we was younger. Now you'll have a particular officer, local government officer, knocking on your door if your child is not in school. We know what happens now. You are fined.
It's my child. If my child doesn't work, I
Exactly.
mean, you know, the thing here is that, I mean, this is interesting because let's go through their reasoning. Yeah. So why they will say, what they will say is that, well, children who are absent from school disrupt the rest of the class, because when they are absent, the teacher then has to take steps to try and get that child to catch up with all that they've missed. And then that's going to disrupt everybody else in the school, right? Now that will be their argument, right? This is the argument they put forward. This is why we have to be disciplined like that. But in fact, you see, here's the problem. The problem is with the whole attitude that you think you have to do that in the first place. Right? That's the problem, right? You don't. And there are schools, there are schools that operate like that. There are schools now. This, for me, is the ideal education system, right? And this is based upon the idea of unschooling, right? For me, this is the ideal system. You go to school when you want, as you want, you study whatever subject you want, you drop out when you want. Yeah. If you don't want to turn up to school one day, you don't, right? If you want to study a subject for a year and then drop it and then just go into another class, you do. You can walk into any class, anytime, at any stage. I mean, not maybe at any time in the class, right? But you can attend any class you want or not. Now you think, oh, that would be ridiculous because but schools like that exist, right? They exist. For example, I read about a school. This is actually exactly what was proposed by one of the authors I was reading, who is suggesting this is how schools should be run. There's sort of, you could call them free schools. And he said, and what you would do is you'd force teachers to be good. Teachers will have to be interesting. Teachers will have to make their classes interesting. Teachers will have to engage their students, and people will go because they find the subject interesting. And when they find the subject interesting, guess what? They're going to dedicate themselves to it. They're going to be enthusiastic instead of trying to ram something down someone's throat who doesn't want to listen and all they're doing is dreaming about being somewhere else. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be, right? But it has to be for them because it's not really about education. It's about compliance. It's about indoctrination. It's about making you fit into a system where you have to be at this place at this time when the bell goes. It's all designed around what? What's it all designed around? It was all designed around factories. That's where it all started. When children, when the Industrial Revolution came along, like you said, Abdul Haqq, at the beginning, where were children educated? By their parents in their village. They learnt at the side of other children and adults. They all learnt together. They learnt whatever trade it was from their father. They learnt things from the people around them. But with industrialization, people left the villages. They came into the towns. Factories were not suitable places for children. So they shoved them into these schools. And what did they do in these schools? They taught them how to be factory workers. They conditioned them, like you said, like the fleas. Yeah. They conditioned them to be factory workers, to, you know, start and stop a subject at the ring of a bell. That's what it was all about, right? And, you know, I mean, this is another thing, is that when we ask this question, education or miseducation, we're still following a system that is stuck in, you know, 200-300 years ago. That was basically all based around the Industrial Revolution, right? It's ridiculous. This is a system that's so old, right? So irrelevant, so out of touch with the modern world on its very foundation. It's just absurd. Everything about it, bro, it's all about control. This is really what it is about. It is about controlling people and making them comply. That's what education really, really ultimately, I think, is about these days.
No, I think what you've highlighted again is I'm not sure, not that I have an answer. I'm not sure that I would say, okay, it should have the flexibility what you've highlighted, but I can see what
It
you're
works,
saying.
bro. It
No, no,
works. You can see that school. That school. It's a school
yeah,
in Bali. It's a private school, and it
right,
works. And the vast majority of children actually attend classes, do exams, right, and do really, really well,
right.
right.
No,
And
I
guess
agree.
what? The ones who are not, the
I,
ones who are not interested, they're never going to be interested. It doesn't
yeah,
matter
yeah.
anyway. that
think
actually works. You think it doesn't work, but it works really well.
No, I'm not saying that I don't think it doesn't
Yeah.
work. I think the idea is really good. I'm thinking about some of the other constructs. Obviously, there's the Scandinavian one, which is again a Europeanized one. That some I think they're looking at that in the Middle East as well. What I feel should be there as well. The education needs to be reflective of the populace. The education, when I sat in school and they put up a picture of a Viking, blonde hair, blue eyes, and the horns, and I remember sitting there, the only black guy in my class, said, "These are your ancestors," and everyone turned and looked at me. I gave up history and geography and everything after that because it was non-reflective. Also, as you're saying, the curriculum is one that is one of conditioning that is stuck in the past, okay, and it's there to limit. It's not one to be challenged. It's not one to be engaged. Even I dare say about the LGBTQ agenda that was there, and we all must have heard or we heard of or about that recording of that young student, I think white non-Muslim student, where someone identified as a pig or a cat, and two girls challenged it. You hear them challenging it. And you saw the teacher, you heard the teacher going back against them as though they were the ones who were.
I mean, instead of coming up with a decent argument, you shut them down.
Exactly. Right? So that comes to the
point. And you shut them down, intimidate them, and threaten them. Right.
Yes.
Which is a surefire. It's a sure indication that you are completely wrong and that you have nothing to stand upon.
And that's not education.
If you had a defensible position, you defend it instead of just shut.
That's right. And that's not education. That the point is, as you said,
it's not.
That's what epitomizes miseducation. You've got a direction, and then you misdirect by bringing in things that are to the children nonsensical. And I'm going to come from the point of nonsensical where some might say, "Oh, that's a bit harsh. Got to be careful what you're saying." Why do I bring that up, Abdurraheem? Let's go back to a Dini perspective here. Everything we're talking about is founded upon the Deen. I know that. But we know that we were born upon our natural disposition. Children were born upon their natural disposition, as the Hadith says. And it's the parents, as the Prophet ﷺ told us, that changes that child, that changes the child from that natural disposition to a Magian, a Christian, a Jew, whatever the beliefs are that they're going to be changing them to. And then that child has been realigned or misaligned from a very early age. Speaking to the point that you said, parents, we've got a responsibility. But when you've misaligned that child, redirected that child from its natural disposition, and then you put them into the education system, that miseducation is going to continue. And I'm now understanding what you're saying, agreeing what you said earlier on, that you then endorsed that because you began that corruption in the very first instance. So we really need to check what we're doing. And I want to give a caveat here. Some might be saying, "Oh, Abdurraheem and Abdul Haqq are talking about rebellion. Don't put your children in school." No, schools, if they are structured correctly with parental involvement, input, and the curricula is reflective more globally, not post-colonial or pre-colonial, whichever perspective it's pushing out, then we can see a shaping and a redirecting of thought, morals, values, religiosity, whichever religion it's going to be, and they will all be intrinsic to the curriculum. But since we've become a secular society, we're seeing things being stripped away by the decades, to the extent when we look at our children, there's a good question, and there's some good points that I think, Hassan, if you could put up. One of them is asking, should we be talking about the education system, or is it social media? Social media is the cat that's been put amongst the pigeons now, because there's so much access to information and, dare I say, knowledge, that you've got students who would rather educate themselves online, as some parents are doing, and they're coming back into the school and they're challenging and saying, "This isn't education." As you said, Abdurraheem, you're lying to us.
No, I mean, look, what Hani's, I don't think Hani's been listening to us from the beginning. So I recommend that, Hani, you go back and listen to this from the beginning, because I think that answers your question. Maybe you just popped in a bit late. Absolutely, the education system, in my opinion, is, it's based on, like I said, it's already said, it's based on a lie. It's based on a lie. The whole lie, the whole idea that underlies it is a lie. And even it doesn't even teach you to live the lie properly. So it's like a double lie, so no, it's fundamentally flawed. It is, I mean, and that's not even bringing in aspects like Abdul Haqq has raised, how it is Eurocentric, how it is essentially racist. It's problematic from many different levels, and there's lots of things. I could go on a lot about what is wrong with the educational system. It does not prepare you in any way, shape, or form for real life. Where in real life do you sit with a group of people who are exactly the same age as you? You don't. When you go into the real world, you go to an office where you have all sorts of people who are different ages. This is never, when in human history have people been raised like that and educated like that? It's never happened. It's just absurd, right? On top of that, people are of different intellectual capacities, right? There's a well-known disconnect between the age at which boys are ready to be, receive information, and girls. Girls are ready way younger than boys, right? Girls are, mashallah, way ready to sit down and learn. Boys are generally, they're not even ready for it until they're sort of like, I don't even know, maybe until in their 20s or something. They're still like full of energy and wanting to do physical things. It's not that they're not capable. It's just that you're trying to make them do something they're biologically not ready or made for, right? It's extremely problematic on many different levels. There's so many things wrong with school, so many different things fundamentally wrong with school, right? So, like, I don't even know what that is. Like, blaming school for everything. We're not blaming school for everything, right? Of course, you're not blaming school for everything. We are all facing multifaceted problems. It's not like, oh, what is worse, school or social media? They're both problematic. They both have issues. It's not either or. It's not like you pick one or you pick the other, right? Like, what's more of a problem, alcohol or marijuana? Well, they're both a flipping problem. Drugs and alcohol are both problems. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like they're both problematic. Yeah. So we have lots of issues and challenges. We are just talking. We've talked about social media. We've talked about it plenty of times, haven't we, Abdul Haqq, right?
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
but today we're talking about education. We're talking about dimensions of education that are extremely problematic. That I don't really agree with you, bro. I think that I don't really agree. I think school's a problem. That's it. My position is school is essentially the way it is right now is not good. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's healthy. Should you take your kids out of school? Yeah, really, you should raise your kids yourself. You should teach your kids yourself. Can you practically do it? Well, that's a different question, right? That's a question you have to answer, right? I tell you what, this is what the main important thing I want to say is I'm a believer in choice. I'm a big believer in choice and facilitating people in those choices. I have one daughter who loved school. She loved school so much. She couldn't stand holidays. She would, every holiday, when the holidays, she would say, when am I going to be able to go back to school? Why do they have holidays? Right? She loved it. She loved learning. And it was a lot to do with, she just had some really good teachers who inspired her, and she loved it. She loved meeting people. She was very sociable. She loved learning. For her, the whole thing was just this, it was just joy for her. I would never think of depriving someone like that from what they are. That she clearly benefited from it hugely, alhamdulillah. Other kids do not. I have seen parents send their kids to school. I know these people personally who have sent their kids to school who have been bullied, right? Their beautiful, shy, intelligent son became a literally almost a suicide case, right? Massive ADHD, attention deficit disorder, huge, what they call it, when a person is, like they get this, ADHD, they get this, they get obsessed with things, obsessed with cleaning themselves, obsessed with this and that. Like, I'm sorry to say, a person who is not functioning mentally properly anymore, literally cannot function. And all of that is like, why are you sending that boy to school? Why you keep doing that? I
Isn't it a
can't
mistake?
believe it. There are
Something
kids
a
who keep
mistake.
going to school, they
Yeah,
hang themselves, they kill
yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
10-year-old boys, 10-year-old kids killing themselves because of they've been bullied, right? And these parents are still sending their kids back to school. It's as if they, like you said about the fleas, they were programmed and they think there's no other way. And they just
right,
think, well, this is why you have to be. You just have
right.
to keep doing it. And their kids die. And we asked this question at the beginning, bro. Would you send your kids to danger and this and that? Yeah, you
They
would.
do.
And you
You're right.
do,
You're right.
right?
Yeah,
And you
that's a
are
good.
doing it right now. And you
Yeah,
just think, oh, no, that's just the way it is. That's the way it has to be. Because that's the only way it's going to happen, right? And you know, you will see your kids become atheists. They will become, you know, they will follow sexual practices that we don't agree with. They will have all sorts of, they will take drugs. They will do, you will see it. It's going to happen to your kids because that's what is going to happen at those schools, right? They will get stabbed. They will get abused. They will get bullied, right? And they won't even get a good education. What for? Because I think I have to do it.
yeah.
There. You're just there. That's it. Most of you are
What we
sheep,
what we
right?
got
And
to be careful
you're
of,
too flipping lazy to take responsibility for your own children. That's what it is. You don't want to do it. Oh, I'm too tired in the day. I've got too much going on. And probably you have because you're so busy, both of you, both you and your wife, your husband, working. So you can have that plasma TV, you can afford that little bit extra nice house, you can have that car that you really want. All for what? All for what, brothers and sisters? Please to ask yourself, all for what? What have we sold our children for? You asked that question, Abdul Haqq. No, that is exactly what people are doing,
mm, mm,
right?
right,
That's what they're doing,
right.
right?
But you know
And
what,
you don't care. You don't care. That's the truth. Yeah. You've given birth to these children, you've raised them, fed them, and you just fed them to the lions. That's what you did. Fed them to the beast, the mincing machine. Watch that movie, people. Abdul Haqq was an extra in it. See if you can spot him. See if you can spot
no,
Dr. Baker.
but no, Abdurraheem, we've had some really good input, I think, from brothers and sisters, the viewers that are there. And I think what you've said and what you've the impassioned statement you've made is good. It's what we've got now, and as you said, to have choices, to have alternatives.
Yeah.
Some aren't able to do the homeschooling. But with regards to, and this is me saying this, when I did my MBA, gosh, 95 to 97, I submitted my thesis. Remember, I did, the title was The Significance of State Funding for Muslim Education in Britain. I was working with Youth of Islam at the time. I was working in the school and I did some case studies. And I'm not saying that this is right, but I thought, okay, the school system is here. There are Muslim schools that are a lot more. At the time when I did that, my thesis in 97, 98, there were no state-funded, voluntary aided Muslim schools at all. Christian schools, Jewish schools, Methodist, and yes, but no Muslim schools. Islamia, Faversham College in Bradford, and there's one other, I think, became the first to do that. But they gave a caveat because we were trying when we were at ICRA to say, right, we want an Islamized curriculum. We wanted Islam to permeate every aspect of the curriculum, every subject. I even tried it when I was running the schools in Saudi and in Dubai. And even in those societies, it's very, very difficult to get teachers to subscribe to that, to put the efforts to make sure that the dean in every aspect is permeating in maths, in geography, wherever you have it. The point I'm coming to is, like, for example, Islamia was successful because they realized they could only have 12.5% of their curriculum that was Islamiyat. The same with Persian. ICRA school, we tried to do 50-50 or 75-25, and we wouldn't have got through to Ofsted. So this brings me on to another aspect here. When we come out of the other side of the education system, and I'm including myself at PhD level in a Western university,
Yeah.
can we come out with the PhDs, the masters, MSCs, the MAs, can we come out to GCSEs if our paradigm is anti-Eurosceptic, anti-Eurocentric, sorry. So we've come with totally different paradigms, which in actuality challenge the system, challenge the Eurocentrism. Would our examiners pass us? And that's for those who come from abroad as well. We've got Arabs studying over here. We've got from Asia. We've got from Africa. If we concluded with a non-Eurocentric lens or an anti-Eurocentric rhetoric, would we all have these qualifications we've got in the first place? And I'm asking that question because
no, you wouldn't.
I don't believe we would.
You wouldn't. You know perfectly well you wouldn't. I mean, I think what the times they are changing, right? I think there is a change of attitude a little bit. But I think, basically my answer is no, you wouldn't, bro. But bro, people are asking lots of questions. What's the alternatives and this and that? And sorry, sheeple and fleas in a jar. Yeah, the fact that you're saying the fact that you're even asking what's the alternative, it just shows you're just fleas in a jar. You've just been trained. And sorry, I'm going to be brutal to you. Yeah, you can't think of an alternative. Oh, isn't homeschooling even more like real life, less like real life? No, because I know what you're thinking. Yeah, because I know what's going on in your head. Yeah, you think homeschooling means doing what they do at school at home. That's what you're thinking. Yeah. So that's what you think. So, and that's what some people do. What they do is they take their kids out of school and they just replicate, what happens at school at home. No, that is not a solution. That is not what you want to be doing with your kids. You don't want to educate your kids like that. You have to understand pedagogy. You have to pedagogy. You have to understand how do we learn? What are the effective ways of learning? School is generally not an effective way of learning. It's not an effective learning system. Yeah, there are some really good homeschooling groups, right? And there is many different alternative ways to educate your children, right? It doesn't involve creating a classroom in your home. That's not what it is. Anyway, I am more than happy to share with all of you the different ways that I've raised my kids. I have sent my kids to school, right? One of my daughters, I would have not imagined to do anything else except send her to school. She loved it. She thrived. She learned. She loved school. It was a totally amazing experience for her, right? Alhamdulillah. I was blessed to have, for her to be able to go to really good schools, right? Her primary school was great. She had an amazing teacher, I think, who just gave her this love of learning. And even where I live now, but she also, that same girl, had a whole period where she was not at school, and that was not by choice. Like we were forced into that situation. And I can tell you that story, but I'm not going to tell it this week, bro. They're going to have to join us next week. I think it would be great for you and me to actually share, because you're a dad, I'm a dad. Yeah, we've both gone through the whole thing. So I think you need to share your experiences. I'm ready to share my experiences, what I've done with my kids, and the results, to show you the results. Now, obviously, it's anecdotal. It's not based on some statistics that can apply to everybody.
Yeah.
But it's real world experience of being a dad and having raised 13 kids through a whole range of things: state school, private school, Islamic school, right? Homeschool, unschooling, right? I've been through the whole thing. The only thing I haven't had the opportunity to do with my kids is to send them to what I think is the ideal system, which is like the school system that I talked about is this school in Bali. I would call it the free school. That's, for me, is ideally how it should be. But I'm ready. I would be, maybe if you're interested, brothers and sisters, join us another time for the next installment.
Definitely, with your 13 and my 16 plus 3 stepchildren, I think that we can give.
Bro, I don't know, bro. Do you think I'm too old to try and overtake you and start again?
It depends. That all depends. But no, I think after
I need to have 4 more kids, right? So
with our experience, our experiences, and
yeah.
I've raised my children abroad as well, and I can talk about schooling there.
There
But
you go. That would be fascinating.
yeah,
I'd love to hear
my
about that.
daughters, majority of my daughters, even there, opted to be out of school,
Well,
studied at home. Some will self-study, and if you see what their qualifications they've got now, those who've just completed their master's degrees and everything. So I think that yes, next week we
and I
should
think
look at
one other thing that would be worth talking about is there actually an agenda to close down schools and get everyone educated via computer, as someone I heard suggesting this is what Bill Gates is pushing, because they'll all be using his platforms and he'll be making lots of money from.
And do you know what, Abdurraheem? That's really
So,
interesting, because before, when I took my career break and I was deputy, then I became project manager of a £15 million scheme for the Department of Education. It was called, I was working for National Grid for Learning. That £15 million was spent on rolling out ICT, okay, to deprived areas across the UK. I had to ensure that these poorer communities, families, had access to hardware, software to learn and grow. So let's talk about that. That was 2001. Okay,
it's going to be fascinating, bro. I really want to hear more about it and what are the alternatives. So I think let's next week talk about the alternatives. Let's talk about what is the alternative to the schooling system. What things practically can we do? What are our experiences of doing that? I think that's it, bro. It's been another amazing conversation. Sorry, sometimes I'm a bit provocative, yeah, on purpose. So brothers and sisters, like, don't get upset if I got offended, yeah, because like I said, I've sent my kids to school as well, right? So we're all in the same boat. I've just explored different options. If I did offend you, brothers and sisters, it's all in the best, like, I have your best interests at heart. I do think we do need to wake up though and just stop passively accepting everything that is just fed to us.
No, I agree. And to conclude, I think this has been another fantastic discussion. It is a passionate one because it's our children, and I know that
it's our children, our children.
The same way. You must all feel the same way. Let's come back next week. Let's continue this discussion, and let's see if there are alternatives. Even if that means that those of us who cannot take our children out of schools can do something, become a pressure group to do more, get more involved.
That's a good thing. What things can we do? Yeah.
Abdurraheem, it's been amazing.
Bro, it's been a pleasure as always, bro. Looking forward to next week already. I'm already looking forward to it, inshallah. Like I said, I could do a whole podcast just on this. Like I could talk about this subject because alhamdulillah. All right, guys. Thank you, Carl. May he for whose sake you love us, love you too, inshallah. Dr. Baker, it's been a pleasure. Everybody, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. See you all next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.